Hello and welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and checking stuff out over here. This video is going to be switching gears just a little bit from what I've been talking about recently. So if you have been keeping up with my videos or sporadically watching them or whatever, you know that I tend to sometimes go on and veer off onto other segments and talk about other things. And today I wanted to kind of shift into light work, energy alchemy, light and shadow work. I kind of think they go together. You know, there's not much way to talk about one without the other. But I wanted to kind of break up the negative, shadowy vibe, the heaviness that I have been recording about and talking about on my BitChute channel a lot recently, with my Negative Agenda series, with the tricks and traps of the Matrix and all that. It's so important to talk about. It's crucial at this time and junction. And I feel called to talk a lot about it, you know. But it's also so important, this personal journey that we're on, right? And what, as energetic beings, having an experience here, you know, what's the full scope of that? And how can we incorporate more slices of the real layerings and the real work that's at hand for us here as multidimensional beings, by opening up and allowing more thought than just that solid, materialistic, physical world of the Matrix. You know, yeah, we could talk about it indefinitely, and it is very important. However, some people, and myself included, we've been staring at this monster for decades. You know, so it's so important to always bring in newness and still stay true to your journey and make sure that you're keeping up with your energy work, you know, your light, bringing in stuff that feels good for you and positive, and still enjoying being alive in your present moments, because that's the gift that we're all bestowed with. That's the open invitation as being alive is, in my opinion, you know. So it's an undeniable truth. It's like a big clue staring you in the face. Like, what's your purpose? Ugh. It's kind of obvious. You can kind of see your setting and role, the space that you inhabit. It's kind of a no-brainer. However, of course, like if you're tuning into my channel, you know it is multidimensional here, and the archons and the matrix, whatever you want to look at, whoever's doing the mind control programming and setting out all that stuff, it's just quite a variety out there. It's tailor fit and altered to just as many different boxes and isms and categories and labels that they can think of ever. It's ever-expanding list of growing data collection algorithms of places and points that they can pinpoint you at to make you predictable and to make you controllable. Because humans in essence here, as we are creator beings, we are not controllable. We are infinite explorers of manyness on an ultimate journey or adventure to create and follow our instinctual desires and intuitions and creative seekings. What a cool journey and place that this really could be, really can get to when we talk about ascension and the shifts, right? To get to that kind of place where positive systems are flourishing and where people and human beings are free to hold and maintain sacred boundaries at any time that they feel so called to do, but also to be free and interacting, free flow of information, of unconditional love and service, just out there as to the collective and for use of all when anybody might so choose to need something. it will come and it will be provided and appear. They will be grateful and loving and accepting of it, with no weird strings and entanglements and I said something but I felt another thing, or oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, I'm not worthy, or oh, do I deserve this? There'd be none, absolutely none of that. Or at least we can get to layerings and steps where it's less impressed upon us with heavy, heavy mind control settings, all of these slave programmings that I've been talking so much about in the Negative Agenda series on my BitChute channel. I'm going to air this on YouTube as well, just so people on BitChute are like, why is she mentioning BitChute so much? But I do also have a YouTube channel where I have segregated content available over there, because it is a way to kind of get at a different type of audience than is available at BitChute, and also a more normie kind of scope. Like I have my whole Comprehending Consciousness series is always available on YouTube. I do spiritual divination, sort of tarot, oracle deck stuff, educational stuff about how to use decks, how to be respectful and operate within positive alignment when we're doing divination, or seeking in that kind of way, because that whole world, the occult tools, are tools, and they are used on both sides of the spectrum. And when we don't understand that and we go into things like divination, we can put ourselves in really compromising positions energetically, spiritually, if we're not aware, if we don't have conscious awareness. We don't own our sovereignty, especially if you're not a sovereign individual. You can't claim it. You don't have this stamp or whatever you look at it as, a bubble of protection or just a light inside of you. It doesn't matter. It's beautiful and unique to each of us, how we see that. But if you can invigorate that and tap into that knowing and radiate out that vibe, then when you go to do these kinds of, use the tools, when you attempt to use tools in interactions, you're going to be in communication with things that are probably on the negative side of the spectrum, infringing, confusing, chaotic, looking to siphon, to steal, to a parasitic type of mentality. And you're consenting to it. It might be a sort of subconscious, don't really understand the full spectrum, but it's consent nonetheless, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I mean, this is why I talk about all these things a lot, and people are more waking up, and I'm not the only one who talks about stuff like this at all. There's lots of us. It used to be a real fringe, tiny piece of majority that you'd have to really seek and find out there in internet land. But today, it's like more and more people are waking up, and even some people in your direct world, all of a sudden you hear them say things or make statements these days in 2023, and you realize, oh, we're on that same side of the divide. That's the big extremes happening here in our world right now, in the Matrix. Anyways, I'm getting off on a bit of a side tangent about what I even want to talk about this morning. What I would love to kind of just talk about and give people some ideas of workings in their own way, maybe you can think about it. Also, it delineates just a little bit from what I've been talking about, the negative agenda, the history of lies, the death of cultures, and like the archonic takeover, the way that they love to degrade and confuse with and cast out and like mix around and cause chaoticness to information, and especially knowledge-based information, historic information, anything that they feel is relevant to societies, to the hues of man, the original cultures, to truth and to positive alignment. I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit this morning about how awakened individuals and those who do a lot of shadow and light work, who have more clear energetic bodies, right, doing the alchemist work, or at alchemist level. I did a whole video too. I do lots of series about shadow work. I think both are available on BitChute and YouTube, but I think I have a playlist called Shadow Work on YouTube. So if this kind of topic about shadow and light work interests you, I have like 5 or 6 or 7 videos, I forget, about different workings and the levels of it, beginners and intermediate, alchemist level, about what the processes of energy work is, and polarization, and gathering these sort of electric kind of magnetic, etheric charges around our bodies, and how that aligns us with different possibilities, how it works within the ether to give us and coordinate us in our place and space and take us to where we want to go, and the reactions and things that, or responses, that we're getting back from the universe, and how if we can keep our light and our shadows in check, and work to get rid of infestation of shadow, keep ourselves as transparent and honest as we can in the present moment, and assess those types of things for clearing and purging all the time, then we break into an alchemist sort of area level, to where you have done enough digging around, clearing out of all of that, to where you can kind of try to get a momentum going of clarity and transparency and honesty and honor, sovereignty in interactions. Because once you do the clearing inside of yourself, and you get more familiar with your own shadows, and you work through your stuff, and you become more full of self-love and appreciation and acceptance within all of the spectrum of yourself, and you're listening to all the scope, and you're seeking harmonious solutions for your shadow and your light and your inner child, your ego, all of these different characteristics, personality kind of things that go into being you. That we all have them in different ways, they're perfect for you. And their challenges are set up just perfectly for the challenges you need as an individual and what you're capable of here, So if we do the work and you start to apply yourself, then you can gain a momentum, and then you can see lots of great changes and shifts, and do manifesting, and that's where the law of attraction, all that kind of stuff can come into real fruition, and you can play with it, because you're a master of your energetic body, and well, not just that, but all your bodies. But the point being is that when we get to this more level of more clarity that comes, we can more easily assess systems and situations that are being presented to us. You have more access to a larger scope and more power behind your light. And when we look out at things in the direct world, or even when you're presented with external things from the collective reflective and the 3D matrix overlay, and you see all of the circus show more for what it is, and you see the illusions more clear. You're not tricked by the magician and all the flashy stuff. This and that is when we can get to a space where we can talk about, well, what do we do from here, and how do we seek truth, and how do we know when we actually find truth? That kind of questioning and work can only happen when we get to a clearer space within ourselves, when we have first found that inner compass, start to listen and coordinate, all of your energy centers together, especially the heart, the throat, and all of your energy centers within the third eye center here, whatever your preference is to visualize those as, 3 or 1, or in the crown as well, when you have more open communication and free flowing with those centers, and they're grounded with the others, and you are more centered and stable within, especially like the first and second chakras, there's always, everybody's got lots of shadow work to do within that, because we've been mind controlled. And the first things that they come for are those first centers. They know the workings of the energy centers, of meridians, of how to control. They have been spending centuries, lifetimes, who knows how long, studying humans like an experimental lab rat. They know how those meridians work. They know how the logical frenetic mind works, and they understand how best to approach, or they're working or trying to find the best ways to approach, to control and to manipulate and to stunt and to wilt, and to get them to be the slave. Incorporate the slave app, get it running, install all the models, and keep your upgrades clicking away and wanting more of that, and focused on the material world, and tying your sovereign value, or tying any value, to what you provide to that system, and also how much stuff you have, how much materials and you've hoarded for yourself, resources, or whatever you want to look at it as. Those, are tricks and mechanisms of the mind control. But the more that we wake up to it, the more that we see it for what it is, and the more that we keep ourselves in check about it. And when you keep yourself in check about it, you radiate out this beautiful vibration of truth and honesty, and the Matrix don't like that. The Argons don't. They will push you to the fringes, like I've talked about so many times. However, the beautiful thing, let's talk about the contracting, converse, whatever, the opposite side. We attract others who recognize truth, and they feel it, and they know, and it's, I just vibe with that person. I get it. I like what they're saying. I hear that. That makes sense. We recognize the truth, and then we can get to a place where more and more of us will come together and have centered spaces in reality. Whether it's in internet land, whether it's direct in your world, it'll be all in both at the same time. The more work that you do, and depending on what your angle of purpose is within the greater scope of the mosaic large picture of humanity, you'll be presented and called and drawn towards direct world experiences that you're meant to impact. Whether you like to look at that as contractual, that we kind of set those data points before we take the ride down here, or whether you like to see it as God and divinely inspired by some kind of fate in a single lifetime kind of thing is meant. You like that vibe more, or if it's just intelligent design and source running through the ether, maybe it's a simulation, who knows? There's so many options out there for what people could ever think. And we're free to do all of that when we open ourselves up and we don't get tied into their divide and conquer tactics with all their boxes and their isms that they want you to be virtue signaling to and subscribing to and being predictable along the lines of those little boxes that you've checked off. That's the only way they're going to get us, and that's the only way they control anything, is when we consent to the control and that we stay in the boxes. That's why there's so much mind control around it. That's why I talk so much about it in my Negative Agenda series, and I'm talking about it again right now when I'm not even trying to. But the place and space of when we know and recognize truth, we start to listen to that compass, we start to see reflections of others out there who have that same or are representing that one truth vibe and that we resonate with. When we're encouraged to use discernment and to actually be free and responsible enough to be seen as capable of making your own way to the world, that is that will be the fertile ground for solutions and stuff. And for what I kind of wanted to talk about today is when we're getting to that place. Like, some of us are kind of trying to get to that place right now, like myself included, Been doing some work, been doing a lot of shadow work and doing a lot of introspection, self-discovery, whatever you like to call personal development or anything, And it includes exercise and health and wellness. It's full scope of different activities and exercises of practice and work that are involved in positive alignment. But if you're keeping up with that and you're doing that, or that sounds great to you and you want to really get into that, I want to talk about the access of information and knowledge that becomes available to us when we have a wider, open, conscious awareness, which comes with clarity and shadow work and all of this kind of like alchemy level stuff that I talked about before and built up to. And not to say that beginners can't try this and that you can't. Everybody has different levels of shadow and different workings to do and stuff. So, anybody can have access to this collective consciousness. I talk a lot about the collective reflective in the Negative Agenda series, which is like the orchestrated, funhouse mirror reflected version, contorted and distorted version of the original organic conscious collective. Now, humanity in itself, and all beings and all species in different life, within different types of sacred boundaries, has their own conscious collective kind of bubble that gets created with a mass of beings who are interlinked, energetically through the ether, plain and flat, as simple as that. Yeah, flat and simple, sorry. I think I said plat. It's as simple as that. Everything runs through the information grid, the ether, the soup thingy, whatever you want to look at it as, that we are all like floating in and living within. There's information sent through that, and there can be information sent into you. It's not just an outward going thing, it's input and output that we're involved in. Of course, the negative agenda work to stunt all of our antennas so much, so that's a whole other conversation. But for getting back, that is what I want to talk about, and where we're at a space where we know we have those, and how do we get into that access of be that antenna and get, whether you call them downloads or insights or contact with spirit or talking to your higher self, pulling information from knowledge, information from source or knowledge from the sun, excuse me. Light is information in itself. Light is wisdom in it, So there's lots of different ways to envision and understand and take in input of information and process it. Now, we have these huge false structurings and templates that mind control that isn't within the slave model that tells us that we can only do it in certain ways. And it's super ingrained. It's drawn and pulled out of anything conceptual, anything spiritual, anything to do with the ether. It's like, forget about that, that's not real. It's only physical information that can actually be seen, heard, listened to, spoken, written down, recorded, held onto, and given to another person. That's the only transmission of information that the matrix system overlay allows or will recognize, wants anybody to believe in or think that's real. And it is a strong arm. And in this reality and space, the physicality that we're in, our material world, it's a big trick, but it's self-fulfilling. The more that you believe in the solidity, the more solid it becomes. And the less that you choose to consent to it, the more fake it is, and the more you see the truth behind it all, But you have to make the choice, because everything is perception and choice here in free world universe. And you create your reality with your thoughts, so you're going to get the reflection back that you believe you're going to get back. Whether, and this is a true belief of what this is your inner knowledge of what you're going to get back. Not what your frenetic brain is talking and yelling over your heart center and your beacon of truth in there. That's just creating malfunctions and waves and real distortions out into what you're sending out, and ensuring that you get distorted responses back. But nevertheless, the truth beacon is always reverberating out. And when you malalign with it, you're just causing problems on top of problems, especially if, unfortunately, it's more of a negative calling, like if your shadow's doing the calling, or if you have an infestation, you're more negatively aligned and you're kind of a negatively polarized person. It's going to have a lot of more strength of calling, and it's going to bring more negative things into you, more negative circumstances and reflections of that, So this is why it's so important to do the work, and to not try to rush yourself into it either, because if we do fall seeking of truth, and I've talked about this in about conspiracy theories and rabbit holes and stuff like that, when we do negatively aligned seeking for truth, at the end of the day, we're just feeding the inversion of a negative overall system. We're not ever going to really find any truth down there. And if the potential of even finding the truth is outweighed because you're exhausting your light while you're digging down in the shadows and collecting more negative charges while you're down there, you're depleting your worth. So you're not going to have the light and full scope of the strength of all of your light by the time you find any truth down there, to cast it honestly, to really assess and ask it what service it needs. You're not going to be strong enough to do that. And so it's like that whole digging's for nothing, because you're exhausted spiritually, mentally, energetically. but maybe your mind is still like, oh no, I can do more. Oh no, I'm not negative. Oh no, I'm looking for the truth. And it will trick itself into saying that that doesn't even work like that. And don't bother, keep digging, because you'll find more truth. You're going to find, you need more evidence. You need more and more and more. But see, that's the negative system in alignment calling you to feed it more. It has such anchors and entanglements and octopus tentacles of ways to get you to trick yourself into feeding it more, because it's solely reliant on users putting in more energetically, negatively aligned energetics into its system, whatever way possible. But when we start to see more clearly, and we start to really take time to slow down, do more service with shadow, and to really start seeing what it needs, and how to bring it to its source, how to offer its sovereignty, to make it recognize the falsity in its belief structure, make it see the one truth. But we only can do that by reverberating one truth. Like, we have to just do it in action. And I talked about this in the last video, I think, about 2023 being the tipping point. It's time for actions, to get it done, to just do it. They will learn by watching. We teach by showing. Teach, learn, cycling is a huge concept that is been stolen and twisted and distorted and inverted into a negative system, into slave master cycle, to where the teacher is up above the students are stupid and don't know anything and have to get all the answers from the teacher, have to give the teacher the exact answers the teacher thinks are predetermined to it in order to succeed and move up to the next teacher and the next level. And that is nonsense. That's a negative system. That is lies. It is a system of servitude. It creates slavery and masters and tyrancy, and I don't want a part of it. No positive seeking person wants to feel like that, because in honesty, and if any teacher out there could ever really look at it, anybody who ever believed they wanted to be a teacher one day, or they're a professor or whatever, when you're teaching a student or a class, you are also learning, teaching techniques, responses that work, things that work with certain students that don't. You're learning different styles of learning, and it's an individual process, which you are always taking in an input of information. Those students are teaching you too. And if you get off your high horse and your pedestal and stop thinking it's about, being seen and being influential on these kids and getting them to agree with you and see things the way you see things, blab and parrot out the indoctrination that you've been told A, B, and C on the questionnaire are the right ones to choose, so better be that answer or else. That's not teaching anything. That's not a real interaction. That is tyrancy and slavery. But instead, if we look at teach learning as a cycle, and we're all on the same level, we're free individuals who are both learning and teaching from each other, just at different gauges on the spectrum of conscious awareness and of maturity and sovereign awareness. If we had that level of understanding and compassion, it's called communion. And that's why I love to talk about it. On my website, I had a whole tab called communion. And hopefully I'm going to bring my site up pretty soon again. Within the next month or two, I think I'm going to have amariespeaks.com back up and live. But I have a whole communion thing, and it has helpful insights and blogs and things that I've written about, and podcasts I've done and stuff about how we get to this conscious level of sovereign beings communicating and exchanging information together, and what that would look like. And I wanted to call it something different, sacred, something that recognizes worth within each other when we're doing it. And so I liked the word communion. And I'm not from a religious background or anything, and so that kind of thing. And then I kind of thought about that. I think it's like it might be a marker in like their cattle call lockstep of like making it up the Catholic ladder, or the Christians or whatever. I'm not really sure. It could be in other religions too. I'm sorry. I'm not theologically aligned. I don't care. I love to listen, and I'm going to get into this because I'm going to do a response video about Gnosticism and about different historical beliefs, and I'll get into that later, where I'm going to kind of talk about my preferences. How I love to hear new information, and I will watch a ton of historical documents and do a lot of reading and stuff. But I don't hold a lot of worth or value into history. because I know, and as I talk about so much with the Matrix overlay and the whole world of media, of publishing, of academia, of higher learning and knowledge, it's all orchestrated and it's all funded and it's all promoted answers only in the forefront. And you have to do a lot of background digging and stuff and to even try to get the crumbs back of the truth inside there. And so this is actually, I'm at 30 minutes already, but here I'm breaking into my real topic about what I actually want to talk about sorting through trust, sorting through lies for truth, and how that's kind of not even conducive to positive alignment whatsoever. Because when we go to jump into the rat's nest, shadow world caves of the 3D matrix, to try to, like I said, sort through kind of what we're offered as historical references, of everything, and I'm talking especially ancient crap, but newer stuff too. Even stuff as new as World War II is absolutely tainted and contaminated, and it's such a shuffling of chaotic nonsense that when I try to do honest seeking of truth, I don't find much that can actually vibe with me and I can actually draw in, except for the strong reminder of the mind control of the matrix, and that there is an agenda. There has been a long controlling, very oppressive agenda this reset around, and that don't trust any of it. You know, because and I talk about this a lot about, you know, there's not a lot of value in the seeking of that. However, I love research. I'm a 7, born on a 7 day, and information and research and learning is something that's just ingrained in me. I love it, but I always keep things very light, and I never tag and weigh a lot of things down and add them to my like strong resources of beliefs or my truths. You know, that's why I love to talk about generalities and undeniable truths, and I like to connect dots in large picture ways instead, because to me it feels more honest and it feels more real, and less tainted by the archons and the negative agenda and all the lies. So when we're looking for truth in this world, in today's world, and when we're looking sort of towards the future of what can be coming into the collective sort of available to us, right? Is this contact with the conscious collective, the organic connections between humanity and an infinite intelligence in the ether, and whether you like to look at it like contact with the spirit world or the Akashic records, or maybe contact with your higher self or with God. There's a lot of different ways and perceptions to look at them, and all should be welcome, and all are welcome to me. So my point being is that when we get to this scope, we can have more clear information coming and better contact for seeking truth in the conscious collective, versus trying to get into the 3D realm, into their materials and look through their documents and look through their research links and all of the data that they're presenting available in the material world to us. That stuff, okay. If you're coagulating and drawing it in and keeping it as data points, cool, I do it. But like I said, don't tie it into sovereign worth, don't tie it into any truths. See, I love to look at, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about, was the personal way that I store information and data. And that way that I put it away for later and come back to it, and also offer it up to the conscious collective to make alterations and offer insights onto them, and take in, you know, new angles and wait for offerings of responses sort of to ideas, and letting them ruminate out with spirit and source. Because, and this is sort of next level, so if you're beginners or you haven't watched a lot of my other videos on like energy exchanges and stuff, this is a little bit this is more of an intermediate kind of understanding. So forgive me if I lose you. But everything like I talked about that word communion and how I really like that idea and building that kind of visualization of that heart-centered interactions where people are all on the same sovereign ground of worth. Just that's where everybody resides at. Oh, I'm having like a pattern interrupt. Oh no, I can't stand when that happens. It's like bloop, takes away exactly what you were thinking of. Oh no, it's so embarrassing. Oh. Anyways, the space of communion and the space of interaction and the space where you can get to where you can offer up the knowledge you've collected out there, say the data sets, the crumbs that you think you've found, the information sources that you want to take in and sort of compare against and judge and try to decide for yourself maybe what could be closer to the truth or what's the right explanation or theory or version of whatever description that you're looking at. Or even if it's different, your ancestry and where you're coming from and stuff like that, or it has to do more with like humanity or whatever. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying about the creator space. Co-creation, I talked about that with communion, right? And this is a little higher than beginner's level, but everything is a process of co-creation. And for positive systems and positively aligned seeking people at least, it's very helpful to look at this like this. Every moment, whether it's yourself in an inner world and it's communication, it's so helpful to see this as a co-creation. Not just maybe with your shadow and your light side, or your masculine and your feminine, or your higher self and your inner child, or, if you like to just look at yourself as one self, that's fine too. You can be a self. But it's a workings of that body and your presence in partnership with Source and with the infinite intelligence of the ether and this whole experience that we're all a part of. We're all intermingling in this web of energy and aliveness, and there's an interaction base, a communication, a frequency level that has nothing to do with speech or anything materialistic at all. That's innate and that happens. And that's why if we see everything as a vision of co-creation, that we're getting into a space of communion with respect and offering up our ideas, our conceptions, our different imagination, things that we can create, that we're leaving space for Source to put an input into it and make a couple of alterations, see it the way they want to see it, and give you input on it. And this is, artists will understand this, no matter whether you do an art with paints, or you do drawing or sketching, or you're writing, or you do poetry or music, or even if you're a designer or anything, like, while you're making a creation, something happens to where, say with a painting, and I love to paint, but this is across the scope of many different things, right? On the white canvas, when the certain colors and certain paints you put in a certain way, they land there and they become whatever you're painting. It changes, and it morphs because you're seeing things there. And then the whiteness and the shadow and something might catch on the way that you're seeing those paints on that have been put on now with that layer, and it changes the whole vision of what you're making, and you're allowing something to come forth. Just like, say, a sculptor, and they're sculpting away, they're allowing that marble to become what it is underneath. But that's a co-creation with imagination space, with infinite intelligence, which is real and which is alive and is fully a part of the whole experience. When we leave space for that and we accept that, we go into each thing like a space of communion, sacred bubble of creation, that we're leaving space for Source, Spirit, maybe your ancestors, your higher self, whatever you love to look at that connective feeling as, leaving space for it and allowing it to make changes, allowing it to alter it or to take you in a different direction. That concept, I call it 1 + 1 is 3. And it's sort of like I made it as like a poke or a joke with their crazy 2 + 2 is 5 and their social emotional learning and all this crazy 1984 indoctrination crap that's happening. But 1 + 1 is 3 in itself is the Great Trinity, and it's beautiful esoteric knowledge, and it's related in so many different functions in mathematics and metaphysics and across time and space and history. But I made like a meme, and I did a whole article, and I think I did a video on it as well about this, co-creations with Source and creating freedom, not slavery. And when we do that, we go into these creations like that, and we leave space for Source to make an impact, or especially if you're on a team and you're actually working with others too. This is such a huge learning point of allowing others to make altercations and changes and alterations, not altercations, excuse me. Getting excited. But having that openness, the freedom, that whatever thing that you're making and creating is in itself a life of its own. And this is the 1 + 1 is 3. A father plus a mother get together and make a child. And they're a family of 3, and they represent the Trinity, 3. It's newness. It's something, it's new life. This is what we are as creator beings. We create new things. We're responsible for creating a new whole little blurb, sacred boundary of life to go off and do its own thing and to become whatever it might be. The purposes and intentions that we had as the creator, yes, but leave space for original creator, for ultimate source and infinite intelligence, because they have their share of the partnership always in that creation. And that sharing is what the individual being takes and goes off into their own, creates their own inner and direct world bubbles with, and then goes out and has interactions with the direct world and maybe with the external world if they so choose. That allowance and that going into it with a mentality like that, that's a positive creation of alignment. That's what positive systems look like. And that is what any sort of building a dream, coming up with a new idea, any creative mechanisms or any kind of trade skills or any kind of anything you want to do, even if it's real and solid and you want to make something in the real world, it all starts up there in imagination space, in the sacred great libraries, the Akashic, the collective, the conscious collective is what I like to call that linking area of infinite intelligence, and it's available to all of us. And I was reminded of that when I did my Friday reading on Telegram for my Saints and Angels card. That no matter how much you haven't used your imagination, and there's so much mind control, contortions, and lies and crap about it. We get beaten down straight as a child right away about imagination. But that is because, and we should know, the things that they poke at the most are because if we get a hold of them, if the light side of positive alignment gets real hold of that, boy, they got nothing. It's over. And we should know things that they make a big deal about stomping on, the ones that they really want to grind into the ground and forget about, and want to deter everybody from doing. We should pick that tool up and go with it. And I talked about that with the triangle as well in other videos, and some of the more occult tools and symbology and stuff. The more intentional weight we give and attention that we offer those things, looking at them from the negative spectrum, we're feeding the negative system. We're consenting to its power and to its ability to be negatively aligned and do negative work. But when you center with your truth and you look at things from positive alignment and you look at that, you see whole other workings and opportunities there. And that in itself is like light shining on their shadowy nonsense. And it won't allow them to be seen and perceived and have strength like they think they do if we look at things from positive truth. But you have to first coordinate and understand how to do that and have good light to shine out and good wisdom and contact with the collective, so that the information that you're getting, you share with them in the whole collective. And it's like you get confirmations, you get whole other angles and workings to it when you learn how to do that. And that's what I do. And I'll tell you, first and foremost, if you want to expand your imagination, if you want to get more in touch with that area, light up your creativity or contact with the collective, or anything like remote viewing, or offering up things for actual guidance and advice from a higher source, whatever you like to look at that as, the foundation, of course, is sovereign worth, first of all, and getting a little bit of shadow alchemy going, and knowing how to seek positively and to be seeking positive polarity. And that feels like great frequencies, having grateful faith and trust that it is there, that it does work like that, that there is an organic model underneath available to all of us that has a sacred boundary that is held and maintained and is there. And once you can get to a place where you can actually resonate with that feeling and get in that mode, then then it just becomes maintaining and reminding yourself about it. I'm not going to say like you do it once and then you're all of a sudden there, like it's a step up and then that doesn't ever get to you anymore. There's leashes and anchors, and like you got to take that step multiple times every day, probably for a long time, and then maybe you stand on it for a whole day and fall down the next day, or maybe it's a week you can be solid or not. Everything is cycles and flows, and so I really don't want to give false expectations of things like mastery. That's not in the scope of the range of my conscious awareness at this point at all, for anybody who's on Earth. But we are taking the baby steps, and we learn to work with it. And when you do it more, and you have this space of gratitude and faith for that, and trust in it, you can store, maintain, and grab hold of information whenever you need it. In all varieties of ways. Now, I'll give a couple of examples of how I do this. It can be as obvious as that kind of cliche and mainstream version of downloads, where, you're getting information that is a huge or model of something that you've been asking for, seeking about, or ruminating on. And it gets, bing, just dropped into you, like during meditation or mostly for me personally, it would be times that during meditation that I get downloads. Or in the shower a lot of times when I'm kind of just relaxing. And that in itself, the download is very familiar to a lot of people, especially on the conscious side of like awakening and stuff, New Agey people. That is input coming in from the collective. And basically, it's like a little storage file, I see it as, and it like a little, a little SanDisk saver, a little thumb drive or whatever, that it has the whole idea on it. And it just sits in my own library. I like to look at my, my mind center as having a library sort of like everywhere, like a whole around. I won't get into too much of the visualization. I do a lot of like meditation visualizations about the energy centers and stuff and get creative with them. But anyways, I won't, I'm at 47 minutes, so I don't want to get too lost in this. But anyways, I have an envisionment of having great storage of all these libraries where certain things, downloads are saved in there. And for me personally, those things are a lot of times concepts like an entire plot to books, or concepts like I'm talking about right now, like major categories or topics of workings that I just get. And when I have the divine time in a present moment and the inspiration and drive and commitment towards that one topic and seeking, kind of go to my library and pull it out, and then I go and see what they have to say about it more and more. And as I'm reading or taking out files, only the first layer of files that I'm ready for, my conscious awareness and newness of learning this new thing, are available. And as I go through those files, I take time at those first couple of data points, take them in, ruminate on them, offer them back up and get feedback, offer them out actually speaking to people who I respect their opinion of, right? I'm making videos about topics where I talk out loud about it to myself and gain more clarity through that, podcasts and all types of other things, writings and comparisons and stuff. And then, after time, the next layering of offering within the download is unlocked, sort of, and available to me. And you get a deeper understanding and deeper meanings. And you do that same process again and put it away. And then it's deep, 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 deep. And never ending. Some of these topics and understandings I just don't have an end to. I've been coming back to that drive for 10 years, pulling on new information and coordinating things. Another thing that I like to do, or I like to see while I am taking in new information and researching things, um, is to sort of log them away in my brain, and save them for later. And like I said, I see it. I use visualization to conceptualize, and that ties it in to me, in the realness of it. And I sort of put it away for later. And it's the same thing I talk about at the very beginning, with having that strong faith and knowing that it is there. Because so many people I hear about, oh, how do you, I forget so many things, or how do you keep on track with so many different, wanting to do so many different things in different angles? How do you get back into something and stuff? And it's like, it's because I have unconditional faith and knowing that the projects that I am working on, or all these little books and bookcases that I could put away, different ideas, visualizations of pictures or paintings, concepts for plots and books, and lots of other things too. You know, when I put them away in the Great Library, they're always there. I know they're always there. And I also know that because space and time are not linear, and everything has already happened, and it's kind of like a whole flux because time is not real. And this is all creation space. And I allow myself the access to that kind of creator mindset role of sharing and communion and co-creation of everything that I make and everything I design, every word I ever write, speak, books, anything I draw or doodle, or anything I take time to actually really make or craft or whatever. All of it is a co-creational space with Source. And so when I put those things on the back burner in my mind and put them away in the library, Source and Divine Spirit and my higher self, all these different things, sometimes my ancestors, whatever, there's many different angles and inputs that I get, but they're doing their share then. They have their opportunity to tweak it when they feel necessary, when they feel inspired to come by and add a couple of lines into it. And the great faith comes from knowing that all those creations are already completed. They're already done. And they're already in the future, even though there's no real time or anything, but in the future, they're already out there. They're already completed. All the books I've ever written are done, plenty of thousands of poems that I've completed, and they're out there in the collective, the conscious collective, free. And they're interacting with whoever they want to out there. And changing and modifying, and each person they interact with gets to have their own perceptions. They will use a poem as an example, right? You write a poem, and as the writer, you have sort of a vision for it. You had what your meaning was behind it, your little metaphor, your meaning you wanted to get through, or what inspired you to make it. But when you make that as a co-creation with Source, and they put their tones and their melodies in there, and they have word choices and stuff that they've inspired you to make. You don't really know why, you don't question why, but that is what it is. That's how it came out. And when you seal it and close it and let it off to be free, each person out there in their own reality bubble, in their own place of communion and responsibility, gets to interact with that free poem and interpret it in whatever way they want. And maybe certain lines speak to them in a different way that you even thought was going to be created for it. But Source knew that. Divine intelligence knew that, because it's all been created. It's all up in the conscious collective, already completed, already enjoying its life and changing. Or if you've created it with micromanaging tyrancy, entanglements and loops and traps, and it has to be seen this way, and the interpretation, this is the right interpretation of this poem, and he meant this and that when he said this, so this is the way it has to be seen, and you're out there worrying about who's seeing it and what kind of way they're interpreting it, and oh my God, would they have a bad opinion of you, and oh, did you make a spelling mistake in it, oh, why'd I make that word choice, it makes me sound unintelligent, I sound like this or that, or I changed my opinion now maybe, that's another big thing, oh, well, this I wrote when I was a kid, so you feel like you have to have 17 explanations about why you have that opinion now, but don't worry, you don't have it now. That is negative creation. That's slavery. You're being a tyrant. You're making a creation, telling it exactly how it has to be. And not only do you tell that poor creation how it has to be, you try to tell Source, and you try to tell people you've never even met in the external world that you're never going to interact with. And you're wasting your precious energy, and you're casting out all these lines and anchors and ties of control. You're a negative system. you're acting like the upper echelons, trying to orchestrate the collective reflective and make sure things are showcased and shown the way you personally feel is best and beneficial to you. It all comes back to service to self. And so when we recognize these kinds of things and we understand communion, space, and co-creation, and we have sovereign worth and responsibility, we want all others to have sovereign worth and responsibility and the right to their freedom. And that includes every creation. That includes things, not just people. It includes ideas. It includes anything with a sacred boundary. This is about, and it comes back to respecting sacred boundaries. And I've done a couple videos on that. Definitely wrote a lot about it. But that comes along with positive alignment and positive systems and services is identification and respect of sacred boundaries. We all feel them, we all sense them. It's an etheric boundary. There's no lies or two ways about it. It happens within the entire creation of space and the universe. They all have it and they all speak it. But it's the negative systems that don't listen and infringe upon it, and that causes all types of confusion. And of course, they have mind control mechanisms and all these great programs, the really strong things of the Matrix that don't want us to ever understand this workings. They want to get rid of it. It's my true belief that the original hues of man and beforehand, we really had great sacred knowledge of these workings and understandings, and that's why they were targeted and distorted and wrapped up by the archons over time and time again, and over generations, and in their whole death march around the planet over centuries, to sort of do that, right? But like I said, for this topic today, I was trying to keep it light, kind of veer off of that, and just talk a little bit about bringing some light and shadow work in, and how we can kind of work to take these baby steps into finding real truth, seeking real answers, and what real solutions can actually come from. It can only come from, right? That's kind of why my whole ramble got sidetracked and off onto about creative respect and creating freedom, not slavery kind of topic, because it's crucial, that whole working and understanding how we get out of the slave master template, because it's ingrained in every different place, and sometimes it's the most obvious is the least suspectful, right? It's like, for some reason, as humans, it's when it's right under our noses, it just gets ignored, and it just becomes part of the horde mess, but pulling back and getting more conscious awareness about that and having self-responsibility for it, and trying your hardest to always get in space of communion, conscious creation, partnership with source as much as you can, and relinquishing those sort of reins of control if things have to be seen this way and have to be that way. When we start to do that kind of working, then and only then, and we'll be, even if it's just a fringe collective of us, but we will have a place and a time where when more of us have done this kind of working and learned through trial and error and learned through things that don't work and do work, and we share our conceptions and we offer all of that up to the collective, and there's great processing and working done up there as well that helps all of us through downloads and through insights and through dreaming. Oh yeah, I got a little bit sidetracked because I didn't go through the other kind of topics that I was going to talk about, ways I store information. But yeah, dreams are another big one. If you can allow it to, and you do the working, we'll open up all of these other ways of communication and sort of learn through doing. And when we get together, then we can bounce all the ideas off each other when we're actually positively oriented for the most part, and then we'll see what solutions come through. When we all get together, when we all have more light to shine at the actual issues and more conscious awareness, we'll make better choices. The solution will become apparent at that time. But now's the time for the work, and that's why I was talking about so much about the tipping point. It's the time to set in motion the practices, to start doing them, and to fumble your way through them, and to find your ease and mastery, and to do that kind of apprenticeship work right now. The hard stuff, the conscious stuff, in your present moment as much as you can. Honestly seeking transparency, honor, your sovereign worth, in things that feel good for you and that relate well to others as well. You know, the service to others is so huge, to just give freely. But when you have a lot of entanglements and misconceptions with shadow, and you maybe even have a lot of mind control programs about what service means and stuff, you'll be in a excuse me in a place where you're trying to give from an empty cup because you don't have access to your sovereign worth. And if you don't have your eternal flame and unconditional love sparking out, you know, a torrential flow that is eternal and never ending, if you can't get at that yet, then this is especially the time to first get at that well. Go dig it out, go look down in it, take the cover out, give it a yell, clear out the cobwebs and the dust down there. And if you can't see the water, the source, the energy flame, you can't see your light reflecting down in there, then you know there's time to do some digging and some cleaning and some shadow work. You know, and even if you can, but still, you know, light and shadow work is continual. It's a never-ending process. So if you see people out there who are saying it ends at some point, or they've made it to this scope where it's, you know, all light, just know that they're stuck in a liar's loop. Yeah, they got their high beams on. I'm sure that they think it's really light. But they're still driving around a liar's loop in the Matrix. So I hope this, I'm going to wrap it up. It's been an hour. I hope it's been enlightening. I hope it's been a little bit, it actually lit you up, you know, because I've been talking about a lot of shadowy, dark subjects. So I want to bring that in. And also express to everybody how important that kind of work is, how incorporating light and things that feel good and breaking up the more heavier negative seeking you might be doing, or services, even if it is, like, I try to offer negative topics in more of a positively aligned free service aspect, so that I try to keep as clear of, like, you know, polarization as possible when I offer up darker information and look at those kind of subjects. But also, here in my own personal world, I do meditation and cleansing and clearing and purging and a lot of things, and a lot of spiritual energetic work on my own to bring light in and to keep myself charged and my vessel charged for work that I do. And I do a lot of co-creation, communication, and communion space between Source and Mother Earth and my ancestors and all types of things that really connect and draw me into strong chords of faith and knowing about our purpose and stuff here. So that always re-enlightens me. But it took me, and I talk about this, the shadow work and stuff, like I said, I'll put a link on BitChute to the playlist for YouTube. But if you're already on YouTube, you know, you can go to the playlist section on my channel and see shadow work. And I talk a lot about this, so you can find more information about that then. In the meantime, if you're interested in other topics, my podcast is on Spotify, A-Marie Speaks, and I talk about a whole variety of those introspection, spirituality, happiness, different topics over there. You can find me on BitChute, Telegram, A-Marie Speaks. There I just drop all my links, anything. If you want to keep up with stuff like I'm doing new, Telegram is definitely the best thing, because I do like put links to videos and new writing and stuff like that. And also I share memes, infographics, positivity tips, things about breaking out of the matrix, you know, little helpful tidbits of quick knowledge. If you're into that and you're on Telegram, you can find me over there. So thank you so much again for listening to my video today and joining me. Thank you for your beautiful contribution to our collective, and I hope I'll check you out next time.